In June of 2022, I actually broke my rib during an obstacle course race. It was mile 3 of an 8-mile race. And I was attempting an obstacle called the box, which is kind of what it sounds like. It's an 8-foot tall box with rounded edges, so you can't just hang on to it like a wall, but it's got a little rope tethered over to the side. Now, I've taken this obstacle dozens of times the same way. So I never saw it coming, but as I was holding one way and just twisting another, pop! It hurt so bad that I blacked out. I don't remember coming down the obstacle. I don't remember calling him, waving off the volunteer and telling him I didn't need his help. I don't even remember starting down the path of the penalty loop. All I remembered was that I just couldn't quit. Every single step was excruciating. Imagine having a broken rib and then having to climb under barbed wire, or over an 8-foot wall, or to carry an 80-pound sandbag up a hill. Now, I could have quit the race. You have to understand, I'm not elite, I'm not professional. Nobody in the world was gonna know my time. Nobody in the world was even gonna care if I quit, and even I could have let myself off the hook for such a debilitating injury. But I walked through fear, I walked through all those obstacles, I made it through the spear throw, I climbed the rope, and I eventually jumped the fire. But here's part of the story that I didn't tell you, is my entire life was driven by fear. I was constantly held back by fear. And I'm only now at a point in my life where I'm actually strong enough to be able to talk about it, because I ignored it for most of my life. But when I was maybe 6 years old or so, my dad moved out and divorced my mom. Now, this is not gonna be an after-school special. I grew up on an island, all right? He moved down the street. But both of my parents were either recovering alcoholics and addicts or were active drug addicts and alcoholics. And my mom simply didn't have the capacity to care for me. She simply didn't have the capacity to love me. And after about a year of living with her, she gave me up to my dad. And when I moved in with him, he was engaged to a woman and had 2 stepdaughters. We moved in one night, and the very next morning, she threw us both out. So here I was, 7 years old, thrown out of 2 houses by 2 moms in one day. And you can pretend something like that doesn't bother you, because I did. A lot of people, I think, when they're rejected by their parents' love, they become perfectionists. And you're people pleasers, and you try to make everybody happy with you all the time. Well, that's not what I did. I decided I didn't need your love. I don't need your money. I don't need your support. So I became grossly independent at a very young age. And that made me very gritty, very tough, very resilient. However, as my dad, who was also in recovery, continued to kind of find his own way in the world, he vented a lot of his frustrations out on me. And I don't really like to use this word, but the fact is, he was abusive. A long time, I didn't want to admit to anyone else that I was scared. I didn't want to admit to anyone else that I felt weak, that I felt vulnerable, that somebody could have that kind of power over me. But the thing is that the more you pretend that you're not afraid, the more that you don't allow, that you do not face your fears, the more power they have over you. And so by the time that I was your age, and again, I don't even like to admit this now, but I was just a scared little kid. I used to be good at baseball, and then all of a sudden I was afraid of getting hit by the ball, so I couldn't hit anymore. I used to be good at hockey, but I was afraid of getting leveled by the bigger kids, so all of a sudden I wasn't good at hockey anymore. And so I lived under this threat of fear where I just felt small, and I was afraid of getting hit, both physically and verbally. By the way, one time I faked an injury in PE class to get out of floor hockey. How did I come from that scared little kid who faked an injury in PE class to all of a sudden throwing my body into jeopardy? It all came down to one decision. And that happened for me in October of 2016, where my boss walks into my office and he says, "Hey, I want to do a Spartan race, and you're gonna do it with me." And I looked at him and I'm, no, hell no. That sounds awful to me. An 8 to 10 mile trail run with obstacles? No way. I had no intention of making myself that uncomfortable. But I went home that night and I had realized something. I already was uncomfortable. You see, at that point, I had everything going for me. I was 2 years sober. I had been promoted at work. I was a VP running a channel of 100 people. I was dating a new girl that's my now wife. Let's give it up for her. Everybody, for Lisa, putting up with me all this time. Thank you, thank you. You're welcome. And I had just decisively beaten cancer for the 4th time. And I realized that I was stuck, that I hadn't overcome any of my adversity. I had only survived it. I was still playing this scared little kid and this victim. Because I was 25 years old, the first time that I heard the words, "You have cancer." Now, I don't know if you've been touched by cancer, but before you have, or at least me, all I knew about cancer was chemo and death. But there's so much more to it, but it was a scary thing to hear those words, and it was even worse to say it out loud. To say to your friends, to say to your family, "I have cancer." It was a very emotional thing to give up that power and to know that you have something that's so much more powerful than you. And over the next couple of years, I moved to Florida. I was a competitive beach volleyball player for a long time. And of course, right after I moved there, I tore my shoulder. In case you haven't figured this out, I'm injury prone. I tore my shoulder. I had to have surgery. I had nerve damage as a result of the surgery. I was diagnosed with something called sleep apnea. And just when I thought I could get used to the things that were happening to me, then I started to lose weight. Now, I weighed about 210 pounds at that moment. Within 2 months, I weighed 153. 60 pounds in 2 months. Dude, I looked like a little kid in my dad's clothes. My cheeks were all sucked in. I was so skinny. And I was admitted to the hospital, diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was just 27 years old. I was sad, I was weeping, I was feeling like a victim, I was feeling like I had been victimized by the disease and by all these things that kept happening to me. And then I asked a question that I regret asking, and I said, "God, haven't I had enough?" Because just 2 months later, I was diagnosed with cancer for the 2nd time. Now, the first time I got cancer, I was scared for about 5 minutes, and then I became defiant. And I was like ready to pick a fight. But this time I was just tired. I was exhausted. I had had so much happen to me in just a couple of years. And it was something that wore you down. But I went through surgery, I went through treatment. We came out the other side and continued to live my life. And just when I thought I was gonna get a reprieve from the universe, my 25-year-old sister committed suicide. Now, I didn't tell you this, but when I was diagnosed with diabetes, I had stopped drinking altogether. I wasn't a big drinker at that point in my life, but I wanted to manage my diabetes. I wanted to take control over it. But when my sister died, I started drinking again. And what went from a casual thing to something that wasn't really part of my life anymore soon became the major part of my life. What you have to understand about me is this: I wasn't an everyday drinker. I didn't drink every day. I didn't get drunk every time I drank, and bad things didn't happen to me every time that I got drunk. But the more that I did, more of my decisions were selfish and reckless. And I was staying out later. I'd go out and stay at the bar till 2 o'clock on a Tuesday night rather than going home and getting ready to go to work in the next morning. But it was so easy for me to lie to myself because I kept saying how I didn't get arrested, I didn't go to jail, I didn't lose my home, I didn't lose my friends, I didn't lose my girlfriend. But all that time that I was just treating myself worse and worse, I was creating this bubble around myself. And I realized that I did it for 2 main reasons. Number one, because I felt like a victim ever since the day I was born. And it was how I justified my bad behavior. And number 2 was this lie that I kept perpetuating to myself that I wasn't hurting anybody but me. And the thing is that people like to talk about me. So the more that I was drinking, the more that my behavior was getting talked about by others, and I didn't like it. So I decided that I was gonna stop drinking just because I didn't want other people talking about me anymore. Well, I'll spare you how this worked out. It didn't, all right? It was the worst couple months of my life, trying to think that I could stop drinking all by myself. Meanwhile, I was tempting fate and I was hanging out with everybody who still drank. I still went to the bars, I still went to parties, I still went to happy hour. I hadn't replaced that with anything else that was better in my life. And then the best thing happened to me. I got cancer for the 3rd time. Now this time was different because the first 2 times I have cancer, I have thyroid cancer, and they took out the thyroid. This time was the same type of cancer, only the lymph node was so stuck back in my neck, they told me they couldn't operate. And so, spoiler alert, it's been exactly 10 years, and it's still taking up real estate in my throat. So this story has a happy ending, but at the time, all I heard was inoperable cancer. So for me, there was nothing left for me to do but finish drinking. And so I did. And I crawled deep into a bottle until I soon found myself on the floor of a Las Vegas hotel where I was supposed to be a speaker the night before, and I was surrounded by cops and security, and they told me that I had to leave because I had gotten in a fight. And I didn't remember doing it. And the thing is, you gotta understand too, I wasn't a violent drunk, I was life of the party drunk. All of a sudden, I didn't even know who I was or how I had got there. I had fallen so far from the person that I wanted to be that I didn't even know who I was supposed to be anymore. When I eventually found a new hotel, which took about several hours, and my head hit the floor, hit the pillow, I finally said out loud, I don't want to live this way anymore. And I flew home to Tampa the next day, and I started a program of sobriety where, God willing, it'll be 10 years in July. And that first year of sobriety was wonderful because I was cleaning up the mistakes of my past, and I was learning about the person that I was and who I wanted to be. And so that second year, I was becoming someone different. And then I got cancer for the fourth time. This time was completely different because it was in the back of my head. It wasn't the same type of cancer. It was complete luck that we even found it. I was getting a massage, and she was feeling around the back of my head, and she goes, "Hey, what's that?" Well, with my history, I just knew. Sure enough, I went to Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, Florida, where they did an ultrasound. They discovered it was cancer, and we had to have surgery and take that out too. Now, this time though, I was ready to pick a fight versus cancer the first few times, all right? Like, I talk trash all the time. Every time I went for my cancer checkups, I posted on Facebook using swear words saying, "I'm coming for you," because it was me versus cancer. But this last time, there's only so many times you can get cancer and not die. And that's what I told myself. I kept saying that this is going to be the one because there's only so many times you can get cancer and not die. And what I didn't realize is that I was still playing the sort of victim. I wasn't defiant. I wasn't trying to live a better life. I wasn't even fighting back versus cancer. I just assumed that this was going to be the one. Now, the other times I had cancer, it involved surgery. It involved radioactive iodine. I have to take pills every day for the rest of my life. This time, they just cut it out. That was it. They cut it out. They said, "We got it all," and sent me home. So I got a win, one big win versus cancer in all that time. And then all of a sudden, I had this blank space in front of me, and I didn't know what to do with it. I was like, wow, I just beat cancer for the fourth time, and now I don't know how I'm going to live my life. And it's about that time that my boss walked into my office and had asked me to do a Spartan race. Obstacle course racing isn't a hobby for me. It's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle that challenges me to be the very best version of myself in every aspect of my life, because overcoming obstacles is the same. Whether we're talking about being out on Vernon this weekend, being in a classroom, being in an office, being in relationships, it always comes down to overcoming obstacles are about skills and knowledge and experience. Overcoming obstacles is about overcoming fear and about doubt. It's about overcoming ourselves. There is a process to overcoming obstacles, and that process is the same. Now, obstacle course racing to me is a great equalizer. And what that means is that we're all built very differently, all right? Some people are gonna be very fast. Some people are gonna be very strong. Some people are just built to take a beating, and I can endure the suffering more than others. And that's what I love about being out on that obstacle course, is that it really equalizes a lot of the things that separates us. Everyone is just covered in mud and dirt and grit and awesomeness out there, and everyone looks the same. So it's a place that it's you against you. It's how we develop, how we work on becoming the best people that we are. You see, I had built a bubble around myself for all these years, and I thought that I couldn't run, that I couldn't do fun stuff, that I couldn't do obstacle course racing, or that because I had diabetes, because I was old, because my knees hurt, because of all these things wrong with me, I was convinced that I couldn't do things that are awesome. And yet my first race experience was absolutely transformative. because I'm out there running through the woods, running through mud, I'm getting cut up, I'm getting bloody, I'm getting injured, I'm climbing mountains, I'm going through swamps. No fear, no doubt, not me against the world, just me in the world and living my best life. Now, when I'm standing in front of a group of adults, this is the part of the time where I like to ask them and I say, when was the last time you went outside and you played without being afraid of getting your pants dirty? Something tells me that doesn't apply to this room. So I'm going to tell you something that I think you already know. Kind of like I mentioned earlier. When you think that adults forgot what it's like to be a kid, you're right. Because most of us are too out there right now in that protected bubble, forgetting what it's like to go out and play without being afraid of getting your pants dirty. So you have an opportunity right now that most of us have already forgotten. And so I, of course, do this all the time because I don't want to forget what it's like to go out and just play in the world and to learn and experience and to do new things. And so throughout that journey, I was becoming a better person. I was learning things about myself. I was getting healthier. I was getting tougher. And then it hit me. Literally, sitting at a red light in a Jeep, an elderly lady going full speed hit me from behind. Boom. Her car hit mine and ricocheted off the corner and flew through the air. Boom, 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 boom. Like straight out of the movies. I got 7 herniated discs from that accident. If you don't know what that is, I just have a really bad back. That's all you need to know. My Jeep was messed up, never rode again. I went home that night, my cat of 12 years died. Ten days later, the lady who hit me died. Now, all I was doing was sitting at a red light. But I was still tough to handle because the last thing that happened to her in her life was she met me. And so that was hard for me. And so I found myself right back where I started, lying on the couch, sad. I was sad, and I wanted to give up. Does anybody ever want to give up? Anybody ever want to quit? But you're still here, aren't you? I did. But yet, you know what happened every day when the alarm goes off? I get up, I get in the shower, and I went to work. Take the dogs for a walk. I paid my bills. I kept moving forward. So eventually I put a new race on the calendar, but I just wasn't in it. My heart wasn't in it. I was sad, I was defeated, I was beaten. And I was having one of those moments where I was listening to a motivational speaker on YouTube, and he's going back and forth about, are you a survivor or are you a victim? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't like my choices. Because what is the value in being a survivor? People have been telling me I'm such a survivor all my life. You can't be a survivor if you're not a victim. What's the point of being a survivor? We're not here to survive. We're not here to just get by. We are here to thrive. All right? We are here to live our best lives. We are here to go after and get the things that we want to have our best lives. And so I said, you know what? Enough of this nonsense with, I can't do this because of diabetes. I can't do this because of sleep apnea. No, enough. I can do whatever I want. I am not a victim. I am not a survivor. I am a warrior, and I am going to war. I am going to pick a fight with cancer. I'm going to do things that diabetics should not. I am going to stay sober every day until I die, and I'm going to help other people get sober because that's how I recover. And so I will not be defined by my adversity, but rather my triumph over it. And that is how you avoid being a victim. It starts with a decision to not be a victim. I spent the next 2 years working on my book, Through the Fire. Now, the first version, all right, was like 125,000 word mindless manifesto. It was like an ego version, okay? I might as well have had Jake Gyllenhaal on the cover and some other action scenes blowing up. But I spent that second year revising and getting honest with myself about who I was and what I went through. And that's where I learned all these lessons from my life and how they can apply. And most importantly, that I don't need to pretend to be someone else. Not in my book, not in person. The authentic version of the story I have to tell is the one that's going to ultimately help the most people. And so a couple of the lessons that I did learn, and this one's important, and I want everybody to remember this because some of y'all have gone through some adversity and some of you haven't yet, but you will. because life doesn't discriminate. And I will tell you what, it is not fair. It is not fair. It will never be fair. But there are seasons and phases of things. There are seasons where you have a winning season and everything is happening for you. And then we have a losing season where everything isn't happening for us. And the way that we can compete in the same event as everybody else, regardless of whatever unfair situation that you're happening right now, is we accept our starting line. So I'm a type 1 diabetic, which means that there is more, like when most of these people tomorrow go out to run the Beast, which is again a half marathon distance on a mountain, they might bring like 2 or 3 goos or gels or a little bit of snacks with them. I bring 20. I have to take one every 15 to 20 minutes or I might die out there. Now, I'm moderately exaggerating on the dying, but maybe not. It's a harder life to do the things that I want to do, but I can still do everything that I want to do. You have the ability to do anything, especially now. Especially now. Is that the one? The opportunities are available. You just have to be willing to work for it. You just have to be willing to suffer for it. And sometimes that's going to mean physical pain. Sometimes it's going to mean sacrificing things that you want now so that you can get things later. But the opportunities are there for all of us. One of the lessons I learned is this, that I would rather fail than quit. That was at the beginning of the Killington Ultra, which is the hardest race in the Northeast, or in the US. It's a 31-mile, give or take, obstacle course. There's almost 20,000 feet of climbing. It's just brutal. It's just scariest environment imaginable, all right? And I'm finishing my first lap, and this is back in 2021. You have to understand, only about 30% of the people finish this race. And I looked down at my watch, and I realized I was not going to make the cutoff. So I was gonna fail the race no matter what. And me and another racer were walking up to a side of a mountain where the next obstacle was to carry the sandbag. So a 60 or 80 pound sandbag, straight up the mountain, straight back down again. And we looked at each other and we said, our race is over. Why should we even do this? And we looked back and said, because I would rather fail than quit. Because failure is a result, but quitting is a choice. If you fall short on something, start again, and start again, and start again. But when you quit, the only thing that becomes easier is quitting. Failure is something that needs to be experienced. There's an obstacle in Spartan, and it's called the Z-wall. It's a zigzag wall, and you go horizontally across using blocks with your hands and feet. You can't touch the top, can't touch the bottom. And it's an obstacle where a lot of newer racers will sometimes offer each other help and support. You know, you may get behind somebody and kind of put some pressure and walk them across. I was one of them in the beginning, and I wish that I wasn't, because the reason is this. It took me 2 years longer to learn how to beat the obstacle than if I had just done it in the first place. The reason you accept help on that obstacle is because you want to avoid failure. You want to avoid the penalty. But if we don't embrace that failure, we're never going to learn something. We're going to be stuck failing time and time and time again, and we're going to weaken ourselves. That means I can't take it without getting help. So when I finally challenge myself to learn how to do this obstacle by myself, I now can do it all the time by myself. We shouldn't be so intimidated by failure. Nobody is perfect. And if you ignore and avoid it forever, your weaknesses will only continue to get weak. When you don't quit, another word for failure is practice. More often than not, the things that we think we want are not the things that we're going to want later. And it's okay to want things. There's nothing wrong with wanting things. It's only when we allow not getting those things to ruin everything else that we have, to be grateful of the things that we have in our lives. One of my favorite quotes is by Walt Disney. And it's kind of fun to do the impossible. And I tell people all the time, and this is huge, all right? Especially now. Because this world that you live in right now is the fastest that it has ever been. So you need to dream big and dream often. I coach people on setting goals right now, and the very first thing that I need to do when I'm coaching other adults is to get them to start dreaming again. More often than not, they are so handcuffed by the rules and by conventional levels of thinking. But Every modern convenience that we use today was once thought to be the crazy vision of a crazy person. Do y'all have cell phones? I was 19 before I got my first cell phone. I think I was 28 or 30 before I got my first iPhone. I used to sell telecommunications, and it was considered witchcraft to think that it would ever be delivered wirelessly. The world moves very fast. Don't ever let anybody tell you that your dream is unrealistic or that you're crazy for having it. People will sometimes tell you that life is a sprint. Life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. But those people are wrong. Because life is not a marathon, life is an ultra. All right? And here's the difference. It's not just that it's longer. A marathon takes place on road and has clearly marked mile markers and has aid stations and support and fans and a map and all those fun things that make it very conventional. An ultra is a minimum of 31 miles. They take place in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes not only are the miles not marked, but sometimes the course isn't marked. And so you can and will get lost. You may remember the story I told in the beginning about Theodore. He was having a great race till about a mile left. Because there is uncertainty at every turn. There is a way to get hurt, a way to get lost at every turn. But that's what life is. It's not about the easy things. It's about how do we mentally get by and build the mental endurance to continue to move forward when things aren't going our way. I promise you, I promise you, it's a law of large numbers, all right? If you keep moving forward, you'll have good days. Here's the bad news. If you keep moving forward, you're gonna have bad days too. It's all part of it. It's all part of it. We need to keep moving forward because life is an ultra. One is this, I ran high school track. And my senior year, I had been sick for about 5 days, and I couldn't eat and I couldn't drink, and I'm gonna spare you the details, but we'll just say I had a really bad stomach issue. And that morning, or that day, we were supposed to have a track meet. And I went down to the gym, and I went right up to my coach, and I was like, hey, Coach Gardner, can I talk to you for a second? And he's like, yeah, just give me one moment. I'm like, okay. He gathers everybody around and he starts giving out assignments. He's like, all right, you're gonna run the mile, you're the 2 miler, you guys are running the 4x4, yada, yada, yada. And he goes on to give this little bit of a pep talk. And right at the end of the pep talk, he goes, and never miss a chance to race against the clock. Well, I just shrugged my shoulders and went and laced up because it didn't matter that I wasn't gonna have my best race. It didn't matter that I wasn't going to perform my best. What mattered is that I did my best effort and that I just showed up to give the best that I can. Now, something I've learned and that I think I wish I could have told my younger self is this. Most of the decisions that you're gonna make in your life actually won't matter very much. And I tell you that because you shouldn't have to stress about every little thing that comes across your day. However, there is that one decision that can change your life. Because in October of 2016, I did not want to do a Spartan race, but I said yes to doing something new. I said yes to a new experience. I said yes to getting uncomfortable. Because of that one decision, I'm standing here today as a motivational speaker, a best-selling author, and a competitive athlete. And tomorrow, I'll be completing my 100th Spartan race at 45 years old. So I really want to leave you with this thought. Never miss a chance to race against the clock. Never miss a chance to be your best self. Never miss a chance to get a new experience, to try something new, and to find out who you are, to find out who you're capable of becoming. Never miss an opportunity to race against the clock. But thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.